shadow in the government's game. Pawn as a child with no face and no name. They stole my past to leave me cold and alone. Always searching for a place that could go home. I was lost in the dark, just a tool in the hand, till she pulled me close and helped me understand. Now the fire inside is starting to rise. I can see the truth through 1,000 lies. Now I tear through the veil, leave holes in the sky. I can read every thought in the blink of an eye. Danica, my witch, she's the magic in me. Yeah, I finally found what they took from me. With a hellhound beside me, I'm standing my ground. No longer a ghost that's never been found. In the dead of the night, I can hear the call. All the ghosts of my past scratching through the wall. My eyes change colors, the power has grown. With Crowley the hound, I'm never alone. I used to be hollow, a man made of glass, but now I am reclaiming every year that has passed. Every memory is falling right back into place. I know every name and I remember every face. Now I tear through the veil, leave holes in the sky. I can read every thought in the blink of an eye. Danica, my witch, she's the magic in me. Yeah, I finally found what they took from me. With a hell beside me, I'm standing my ground. No longer a ghost that's never been found. I ain't running no more, yeah, I'm ready to fight. Gonna settle that debt in the depth of the night. They tried to break me, they tried to erase, but they can't hide the blood from the scars on my face. The veil is thin and the engine is hot. I'm taking back everything that they thought I forgot. Now I tear through the veil, leave holes in the sky. I can read every thought in the blink of an eye. Danica, my witch, she's the magic in me. Yeah, I finally found what they took from me. With a tailhound beside me, I'm standing my ground. No longer a ghost that's never been found. I remember it all now. Every single face, I'm calling for you in the dead of the night.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Henry. For those of you that don't know, for those of you who do know, you know who I am. Tonight's going to be a kind of a long story, but it's based on true events. This did happen. Now, I'm hoping by telling this story I don't piss a lot of people off. Not trying to start no race war or anything like that, just stating facts. I hope you understand that, and this story is kind of dear to me. It's one of those ones that'll reach out and touch you. Might make you a little sad. Might make you thankful for living in today's times instead of back a long time ago. There is some bad things that happened in the past, and that's just history. Can't change it. All we can do is learn from it and not make the same fucking mistakes. But in any case, in this story, you're going to hear a lot of good, a lot of bad, maybe. But you're also going to hear of some creepy shit that takes place even in today's times because of what happened in the past. And I'm not blaming nobody, it's just the way it is. Not always proud of our history, but it's our history. Everybody's. Yours, mine, everybody's. learn from the past, learn from history, so we don't repeat this bullshit. I hope you enjoy tonight, and if you do, subscribe if you're not subscribed. Give me a thumbs up. It helps the channel grow. Plus, it also makes me feel a little better to knowing I'm doing a good job. Leave me a message. I'll get back to you. I check messages on all the videos, lives, and video like tonight. If this video touches you in any way, let me know. I thought I'd do something slightly a little bit different. But like I said, I may change the names on these people, the place, names of places. But the bones of the story is true. That's why I've changed the names and locations and things like that, because it is a true story. So, sit back, get you something to drink, kick back and relax, and just follow along in the story. I hope you enjoy it. Now I'm going to take you back to the last days of the war between the states. We've all come to know it in history as the Civil War, and my old great-granddaddy told me there wasn't nothing civil about that damn war. And he said he preferred that it be called the war between the states. To each his own, whatever you want to call it. North and South, whatever. It did take place, we all know that. But here's a story that comes from the last days and the aftermath of the Civil War, war between the states. Now this story takes place in the Midwest, in the southern parts of the Midwest, past the Mississippi, because that was the dividing line at one time. But in any case, this town don't exist anymore, except in history book. It's hard to find, but it's there. There was a town, and in this town, that was a southern held territory for many a year, there was a parish there. And they did own a few black slaves. I'm not trying to be mean about it, that's just stating a fact. There was lots of parishes back then that did own slaves. Well, there was a man and woman that become husband and wife. They were owned they was owned by a church. Then on the auctioning block, there was a young man, young black man. He was purchased to come to the parish and help out with some of the duties there. Well, the church brothers, the priest there was a few of them. There was old ones and a few younger ones. The older ones outnumbered the younger ones, but they had to keep younger ones coming in as priests would pass on or move on, whatever the case may be. They had to be replaced. So these younger priests had a little bit of a different attitude. Now, understand this, not everybody in the South owned slaves. That was mainly for the rich, even though there was a few not so rich that had slaves. But in any case, not all people had slaves. Not all people in the South kept slaves and thought it was okay. Well, some of these young priests would introduce the younger black guy to the husband and wife. And they told him what his duties would be, which would be to ring the church bell, tend to the horses out there when people come to church out in this little countryside, little outpost of a town. It's grew quite a bit now. That town's still there. He would also tend to the gardens and the flower gardens. They had a field or two. They'd tend to that. Then they would also come in and clean up the church after each service. And if they wanted to, they were allowed to come in and sit and listen to the services. For the most part, this church tried not to treat them bad. You know, they frowned on the whippings and all that. All they said was, you know, we'll treat you good, but you're still a slave. Don't run, you won't have no problems. We'll take as good a care of you as we can, provide for you, and you just do your jobs and everything will be smooth. Well, the young slave had accepted his fate, and he was very inquisitive. He craved knowledge. He was as gentle as could be. Didn't have a mean bone in his body. All he did was he wanted to learn. He said learning was what he was meant for. He would work, but he had a fascination with learning. So, the brothers at the seminary, the church, they started taking notice. And one by one, they'd sneak out and go out there and talk to him, call him aside and talk to him while he was working. And sometimes they'd sit there and take a break together, and because these priests worked right along with those folks. You know, they wasn't like most of them. They just sat back and watched while they worked. No, they got their hands dirty too. Because that was part of their duties too, as being the runners of the church. So they got talking one day, and we're going to call this guy Fred, this young black man, slave. Fred asked one of the brothers, and of course, I can't talk like they did back in those days. I won't even attempt it because it would sound like I might be making fun of them, and I'm not. I'm just telling the story. He said, you know, I was born into slavery. And all I ever wanted was to be a learned man. Like a lot of these people I see that can read and write. Because the war can't last forever. One side or the other is going to win. And if Mr. Lincoln win, then we'd be free. They may not teach me to read and write after the war. So these young priests got talking amongst themselves at night time, and they'd take turns, smuggle a book out, a pamphlet, just anything they could find that had words. Well, they even found some books for like the little kids. So, you got to start somewhere. I don't care who you are, you got to start somewhere. And we all started someplace to get to where we're at. So they would bring him small things. And the first thing they brought him was a slate that was broke. Somebody had discarded it, and the church found it in the yard, and they wrote the ABCs on there. And sometimes on break, they'd hold the little slate up and say, now this is an A. A is the starting letter of apple. I see. A is the letter that starts for the apple. And he sat there and repeat that to himself a few times and think. And they went all the way through the alphabet, all the way through, and each letter stood for something. B for ball, C for cow, and so on and so forth. They'd teach him a few of those, and then they'd tell him, you take this slate so you can remember, and you practice this, and when you got these 5 or 6 letters, what a word starts with that has that letter, then we'll kind of test you on it, make sure you know it. Then we'll give you a few more letters all the way through the alphabet. Well, he said every Sunday there in church, and after he rang the bell and everybody come in, he'd sneak around in the back there and have a seat and listen wholeheartedly. Well, as time went by, the man started learning to read a little bit. So then they told him that we're going to try something now that you should learn. You need to learn, because this war can't keep going. So they took his slate and they wrote 1 through 10, the numbers. And he said, well, what's this? They said, that there's the number 1. Now we're going to give you 5 of these numbers, and you tell you what the name is, and then you learn that whenever you see this straight slash, that's a 1. And when you learn that and got it down pat, then we'll give you some more numbers, and eventually we'll show you what you do with those numbers. You can turn them into dates. You can turn them into like a number of apples. Just say if I said that there's 2 apples sitting there, then you'd point to the number 2. That number 2 represents there's 2 separate apples. Well, he was just craving this knowledge. He eating it right up. He was soaking it in like a sponge. So every day you'd hear him out there. 1 is for 1 bale of hay. 2 is for the 2 mules pulling this plow. He just talk up a storm out there, and the brothers every so often be out there to check on him. Walk outside and check in between their duties and working in the church. Well, he kept learning, they kept teaching, and they started giving him books. Now, this is over a couple-year period of time there. So one day a courier comes to town, and he's flying through the streets, pulls up to the church on that big old horse, throws the reins around the horse tie there, and thought, well, what's going on? Must be something happening. So the young black man told the husband and wife that, hey, we better get up there and see what's going on. That courier come in pretty fast, running that church. So they grabbed their jackets and hats and wiping their face off as they walked toward the church, and the guy come out and he said, Did you hear? Did you hear? The war's over. The war is over. Mr. Lincoln won. You're going to be free men and women. So the young priest come out and they was like, well, there's been a winner and you're about to be freed. Now, there's a few things that you need to know. So he was like, and what is it? He said, well, there's good and bad news. The good news is here within the next week, you're going to be free men and women. But please keep in mind, just because the war's over, and yes, you are free, there's lots of dangers outside of this parish. And there's still people that would still try to catch you and lynch you, mad because they lost the war. We can't keep you here because the union says we can't. So, you're going to be getting your free papers. And you just can't stay here. The churches can't afford to pay you. And now when you work, you get paid. You're not slaves no more. You're free. I know we can't change the way times is, but we tried to do the best we could. And I hope you understand that. They was a prisoner because they wasn't getting beat there. Yeah, they had chores, but they wasn't being mistreated. Which, back in those times, that was a blessing. He's now come into church, and I want to talk to you in there away from prying ears. Now, I'm going to give you guys, the church is going to give you guys real high recommendations on work and that you're good people. And then I'm going to draw you a kind of a map with roads. Try to avoid roads. Stay hid until you get to this location. I know the men and women of this area very well. And there's a real promising businessman there. He owns lots of acres. He'll do you right. He'll give you a job, a house, and you'll work for him. You're not a slave. You will be paid a wage. And I hear they're starting a school there. So, this place is probably about 15 miles as the crow fly. But now it's a long journey afoot. We don't have any horses to spare. We're going to load you up a sack with some fruits and vegetables, and a little bit of ham from the pork that we had. Maybe even throw in some cured bacon. And that should carry you until you get to this place. This guy has big orchard, livestock. They even have a logging outfit. And you all just decide what you think you might like to try, and this man will hire you. You tell him this parish sent you. But you try to stay clear of people you see. Stay hid, because some people are just mad. They don't understand their way of life is coming to a halt. So, not everybody you encounter is going to be mean and cruel, but just steer clear of everybody until you get to this place. They'll treat you good there. You got my word. Well, the young slave was like, but I don't want to go. And he goes, for you, I got a special present. We got together, and normally this is for the young kids in the parish. We give them a Bible of their very own. And show of our appreciation, we would like to give you this Bible. Well, the man didn't know what to say. He'd never been given something like that. Brand new. Well, he had learned to read enough that he could decipher what it meant to a point. That's all that mattered to him. He'd figure out the rest as he'd go along. The priest told him that there's more colored people that were slaves there. Now they're free, and now they work there. So it ain't like you're going to be going someplace where there won't be more people of color like you. So, just so you know, they have their own little community there. He said, but I don't want to go. This is pretty much all I know. He said, but I can't keep you here. If I do, they'll burn the church down. And we'll all get thrown into a prison. You have to go. Now tonight, under the cover of darkness, you all get to sleep real good. And late at night, I'll come wake you up. We'll take you out to the edge of town, and I'll point you in the direction. You keep walking till you come to this little tiny town. It's a little river town out in the middle of nowhere. But try to avoid any and everybody, because there are lots of cutthroats out there. Well, he didn't get no sleep. He cried and he cried. The other two, they was confused and scared. They knew they was free, but they knew that it'd be a long time before people forgot. So, come the time, and the young priest showed up with his torch. The rest of the priests were outside the door, and he said, would it be unfitting if I could shake your hand? I said, I know I can't hug you because that just ain't done here. And he goes, look, you're free now. Come here. And he opened up his arms. And they hugged each other, and he hugged every one of the priests, shook their hands, and thanked them. Then they boarded the buckboard. Two priests got on the buckboard too, and they took the horses and headed outside of town. And they got a little ways out in the country, and they said, now, face this way. See that big star up there? Walk in that direction. If you get to a place on the river and you don't see a town, in that area, it's okay to ask. And show them this paper in case you don't remember what it says. And they'll direct you. You tell them that we sent you. Just show them that paper. It states all this. We wish all of you the best of luck. Sorry that things couldn't have been different. But we wish you the best. Go and make something of yourselves. Make your people proud. So they got out of the buckboard and headed into the cornfield, and they kept watching that old star. Every so often, after walking quite a while, they'd get tired and they'd stop, take a break, quietly whisper, then reach into their sacks and get them something out to eat on, and couldn't use no lantern, no light, no torch. Afraid somebody might see them, the glow off of it, so it's pretty much walking by the moonlight. If anybody knows anything about the full moon, it's pretty bright. Well, they walked for 2.5 days. And they come to this big hill, and then it started dropping off toward the river. Well, they come to this road, like in this valley, and they headed up that road. Not sure what they was going to find, but they could hear all kinds of jostling going on. There was a train there, and there was people talking, and animals bellowing, and they was very anxious, but they was scared shitless, and I don't blame them. They didn't know what they was going to be walking into other than what they was told. Well, as they rounded the bend there, they seen these railroad tracks. There was the big old train, the iron horse as the Indians called it. Well, they was unloading cattle and loading cattle, loading pigs, unloading pigs, crating chickens off. Well, they had never seen anything like this. It was a regular town right down there on the river. They was amazed. And of course, it ain't like everybody stopped what they was doing and just stood there and stared at these people. But they looked, and there was some more African people. There was some that was a little darker than others. Some that spoke pretty good English. Some of them didn't speak nothing but maybe a line or two of English. But they knew in some way, somehow, they had found home. And this was going to be their new start. They were freed people. So they wandered up and crossed in between the two trains hooked together there, the two cars, and on the other side, to the right-hand side, sat a big old white store. Well, there wasn't no sign that said whites only, so they walked up the old wooden steps and stood on the platform out front there and peeked in, and there was some more colored people in there. There was white people in there. Well, there was even kids. It's a little store. Had all kinds of stuff, kind of like a mercantile. Had saddles, had feed, had chicken eggs, chickens. Why, it even had baked goods, flour and sugar, cinnamon, pepper. All that good stuff, molasses. Why, they even had big baskets of apples and peaches, tomatoes, potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn. Well, they'd never been inside of a store, but they was seeing one for the first time. Well, they watched as people walked into the store and people walked out of the store, and they watched what they was doing. So, young black man, he reached in his pocket and got that piece of paper out, and he's looking it over. He could read some of the words on there. So they opened the door and looked real cautiously. Didn't know if they was going to get beaten or what was going to happen to them. Well, the guy standing behind the counter was kind of a thin young guy and had glasses on. And, come on in, welcome, come on in. What can I do for you today? He said, well, sir, he took his hat off. He said, sir, can't read exactly what all this paper says, but we're looking for this guy, and there's a name on here, but I can't put it together. I can read you the letters, but I don't know how it goes together to form the name. We was sent here from the neighboring town, about 15-20 miles, from the parish. We was slaves there, and we free people now. Glad to hear that. Y'all pretty peaceful, aren't you? Now, this town here is pretty peaceful. Anybody and everybody that wants to work, I'll hire them. No questions asked. You will get paid just like the whites do. Everybody's treated the same here. I just ask a few things. Even though there is a couple saloons here, I ask that on the hours that you're working, don't be drinking. No fighting. Keep the cussing down to a minimum. Can't help if you smash your finger and you said, oh hell. But keep the cussing down to a minimum if you would, because we got lady folk here. Don't want to get them perturbed. He said, my wife wouldn't appreciate that. He said, all we ask is, we'll pay you a fair labor. You'll make the same exact amount that the white person working beside you will. Just give me a full day's work. On the days you're sick, that's understandable. Then you stay home and rest. And you come back to work when you feel good. Ma'am, are you two married? The guy took his hat off and spoke up, and he goes, yes, sir, we sure are. It's my wife, Esther Sue. He said, my name's Charlie. He said, we're looking for work too. We ain't got no place to go. He said, that's no problem. We're constantly building houses here on my properties. He said, I employ most of everybody here in this little community. And here, there will not be no treachery. There is no such thing as color here. Everybody is the same. What kind of things are you interested in doing? He said, we got a sawmill. We got a logging operation. We also have people clearing land, if you're into that sort of thing. Got orchards, too. Got lots of orchards. We got apples, peaches, plums, pears. We even have a few pecan trees, too. And he said, all this needs to be tended to. Plus, we have regular fields. And he said, we do have the latest equipment here. If you don't know how to use the new tractors that's coming out, you will be taught so you can switch off and on. Everybody gets a turn. Everybody's treated equal here. Ain't no whips, no chains here. Ain't gonna be. Well, sir, where will we sleep tonight until we can get money? Oh, money's no problem. I reckon you all be needing some supplies. Well, you work for me. I own the store, own most of everything in this town here. You gonna show up for work? Now, after we load down, and he said, I got this here ledger here. Everybody signs a ledger. Everybody does it because everybody lives from payday to payday. No problem. Do you know how to write your name? He goes, I can put my mark. That's fine. May I ask if she's expecting? No, not yet, sir. We was waiting until freedom comes so we could have some children. They'd be free. Well, let's go through the story here, and you pick out the supplies, and I'll help you along with the supplies you need, and then you just put your mark right here. And he said, or I can spell your name for you, and you put your mark beside it. That's how I keep track. And he said, not the first payday, but the second payday, you can pay a little bit on your note here. He said, everybody does it. He says, no big deal. We work on the honor system here. So the three of them walked with the store clerk, and they was picking up bacon, ham, green beans, flour, sugar, little honey, just the essentials. And he goes, well, we'll carry this stuff, we'll carry it around to the back. At least I got a buckboard back there, and an old horse. He's back there tied up in the shade there. And I'll take you to your cabin. I hope the cabin's suitable. We're still building more because there's more and more people keep coming. Freed slaves. He said even some white people that come to this nation and can't quite make it, so they end up coming here. So they go up the road, and there's the only turn off to the left. They go up the road and turn to the left there, and they was like, hey, boss, what's that building there? Oh, that's a school. School? Yeah, that's where the kids go to learn, and sometimes we hold meetings in there. Oh, okay. Buildings for learning. Keeps the rain off your head and snow off your head, and well, that's a good idea. So they go on up the road, winding up and down the hill, and come to this turn to the left, and the old man turns the horse to the left there, and they wind down off in them hills and hollers there, and they come down to eventually down to a flat spot, and they went past a couple old houses and got down there, and there were some old log cabins. Now, they was only like 1-2 room log cabins, but it beat sleeping out there underneath the oak tree. So they all climbed off the buckboard, and he opened up one of the doors, and he said, it ain't nothing fancy, but it's got a table, benches for you to sit and eat. It's got a fireplace for cooking. Anything you need, lumber or whatever, so you can make it home for yourself. You come, tell me, and then you pick out the lumber you need, because you'll know what you want. And you just put your John Henry there, your mark, your X, your name, whatever. And he saw it does help me keep track, because he said, I got contracts was selling lumber, and he said, this way, see, as I got big stacks of lumber, I can keep track where the lumber is going to. Is it going to downriver, upriver? Is it going for here? Because he said, at the end of the year, I got to keep a tally on all this here. And he said, there won't be no charge. Don't charge rent. You just keep place up a little bit and work for me, and every day I'll come pick you up and give you a ride to work, take you back home. So they went to the next building and opened up the door on that one, and he said, y'all can decide which ones you want. You know, maybe you want this one, and maybe you guys want this one over here, and vice versa, whichever. But he said, they're clean. And these do have a floor in them, a wooden floor, and there's brooms in there. He said, we keep a broom in each one of them. That we get done building it, we go to the next one, leave the broom there. Well, they was mighty gracious, because they'd been sleeping in cornfield and pastures and prairies. So they was mighty thankful. Well, there was even some firewood outside of each cabin, already stacked up there, ready to go. So he said, I'll see you in the morning. I'll be back. And they said, well, sir, we didn't catch your name. He goes, oh, hell yeah, he said, I'll forget. He said, I get the windbagging along, and I talk to everybody. He said, they call me Charles. He said, matter of fact, I think I'm the only Charles in town so far. So he said, if you ever forget, just come to the store. He said, I own the store. I own most of everything. You just tell them the owner of the store. They'll know who you're talking about if you forget my name. They said, well, thank you, and we'll be ready in the morning, boss. He said, well, I'll take you around all the properties and show you. You can kind of look at what they're doing and decide if maybe that's something you'd like to do. If not, we'll go on down a little further and we'll find something for you. Y'all have work. So that night, the husband and wife got tired and they went into their cabin and turned a little lamp on, and they was just enjoying being free and safe. Well, the young guy, he went into his cabin and sitting there looking out the window. He'd finally found home. So he tried to sleep, but he was too excited to sleep. Next morning come real early, real fast. They was all three up in one cabin eating breakfast and talking, and all of a sudden they heard the sound of a buckboard coming and horse hooves pounding the dirt, a little dust behind flying. Nice little gentle breeze out. And they heard him, whoa! The old horse stopped, and he put the brake on the side so the horse wouldn't wander off with the wagon, get spooked, take off. He sat there for a few minutes and reached into his shirt, pulled out a little notebook and a little stub of a pencil, and he was writing stuff down in this notebook, and then he'd make a scratch. They all got their work clothes on and come out, and they said, what you doing, boss? He said, just doing some tallying, little scribbling. He pulled that notebook up, put it in his shirt pocket, put his stub of a pencil in there, and he said, you all ready? So they all boarded the buckboard, and he said, I won't leave as fast as I come in, because I was by myself, don't want to jostle the missus there. And as they're sauntering along, like, boss, what can we expect today? He said, well, what do you mean? Well, work. And he goes, well, I'm going to take you around and show you all my different businesses, and you see something you might be interested in doing, or something maybe you know how to do. Right there. We'll just tour the whole place, and you just decide what kind of job you'd like. First few days, they'll show you how to work, do these things. In the feed mill, we have different mixers and grinders and stuff, and they may have to show you stuff like that. No big deal. Boss, can I ask you a question? You can ask me anything. What is it? He said, now we passed a school. Is that for all children or just the white children? He said, well, that's a tough one. He said, let me try to see if I can explain. And people are still mad after the Civil War. So, what if somebody wanted to have a school? Well, I'm sure I could work a deal with them. Why? He said, oh, I'm just curious. I know we can't go to school with them white kids. He said, well, if you come up with an idea, I'll make it happen. So they drive around and they pick the jobs they want and get off the buckboard. And they was the only three living over in this valley. Some of the others had been there for a few years. They lived there on the way in town, that little valley there. They'd been there for years. Well, some of them was slaves there. They was freed and they just stayed there. They had no place else to go. So them slaves, they'd be talking amongst each other, and the white guys would be talking. They was shocked and amazed that they was being treated fair. Why, come payday, they all had the same amount on their checks. They was thrilled. Well, that day they got off work. They headed back into town there, by the tracks. They meandered around watching things, watching the big train come in, and horses being unloaded, the horses being loaded, cattle, chickens, farm goods, even farm equipment. Well, he noticed some of these kids sitting over there along the river underneath the big cottonwoods. So the young man walked over there, and he was a big old man. He walked over and sat down, and he said, how'd you children like to hear a story? Well, they turned around, they was all ears. All they was doing was just sitting there watching the river. Well, he started telling them stories like Samson and Delilah, Moses. And he always started the same way. Gather around, children, gather around. We're going to tell a story now. And he'd get his Bible out, and he'd look a little bit, and then he would talk and tell them stories. Well, next thing you know, he's got half of the other people coming up there listening, wanting to learn, because they didn't know. So he's telling them. And he said, well, I'm going to stop the story here, because it's about time for me to go home. He's like, mister, where you live? He said, I live the next valley over. He said, but tomorrow when I get off work, I'll meet down here to tell my stories. We'll pick up where we left off. He said, who knows? I might even tell you about the great Pharaoh. He was the king of Egypt that had Moses and Moses' people. But them kids was fascinated. So, next day he goes to work, get off. Now there just ain't 7 or 8 little kids sitting there. Now there's 10 or 15. Hell, 7 or 8 grown-ups sitting there listening. And he started out the same way. Gather around, children, gather around. It's story time. He pulled his little Bible out. He said, this here was given to me from the parish where I was enslaved. All these stories are right here. He said, I ain't very good at reading real good yet, but them stories is in here. I was told they are. And I'm learning. Every night I go in and study. If you children want to make something and learn about the world, learn all you can with education. They said, but we ain't got no school. We don't even have a church. Them white people, they got a church. Big church. Through the week, they use it for a school. Come Sunday, they use it at a church. And we sit outside the windows and listen. But we're not supposed to be there. Times ain't changed enough yet. Well, this guy goes home that evening and he's beginning to think. He's a freed man. He's got a job. He's starting to get a following. So he goes out there in the moonlight and he's looking. It wouldn't take a very big building. A few windows. So he starts counting. He makes a mark in the dirt there. He walks the other way and counting along. He stops and makes a mark there. Before long, he's got 4 corners marked out. So he goes in and he's laying there on the bed thinking, you know, if I just go a little east here, I could walk the tracks and not very far from town. We just always had to go the roadway, which is the long way. Now, from town to here, be about 1.25 miles at most. So he's looking at the window and he starts calculating. He said, now, this would be a good meeting place. So, next couple of weeks he goes to work and he's still thinking. Finally one day he goes, boss, you mind if I ask you some questions? Well, shoot, go ahead. I'm all ears. He said, what would I be charged? How much do I have to pay to get enough lumber, material, nails, and hammer or two, and some saws, and things I'd need to build a small building down here? He said, I'm afraid those children is going to get run over by a horse, a runaway wagon, or get in the way of the people loading the river boats. Maybe get hit by a train. He said, I'd like to get him away from the hustle and the bustle of the town and start kind of like a learning center, somewhere where we could congregate, our people could congregate. And yours people is welcome too. He said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll donate all the lumber and the windows. And what I need from you is the promise that you'll work here. And if there's ever a problem, you come and tell me and I'll see if I can fix it. But y'all is good workers. I need the good hands. So if I give you the equipment and everything, wouldn't cost you a dime, what would you do with the building? He said, well, I could have me a building to tell my stories in, talk about the Bible, maybe have a little Sunday school there. It could operate as a school and a Sunday school. And he goes, but first, I need to buy some land. Right there we live at, there's about 40 acres there that it ain't farmable or anything, but it would suit my needs. Wish I could have me a few pigs there and maybe a couple cows, some chickens, and have my little church building there that could add as a church and a school, gathering place. And he said, everybody welcome. Anybody wants to come listen and learn is always welcome. When do you want to get started on that? He said, well, the sooner the better. He said, you know, we're in midsummer now. Won't be long, fall be rolling in, and then winter. It'd be nice to have a roof on it before the winter, and maybe the walls and door and the windows in. He said, in the store, we got a wood stove in there, and somebody ordered it and decided they didn't need it, or couldn't afford it, whatever. And he said, I'll throw that in too. So in the next couple of days, the first 2 wagons of lumber and blocks come in, and hammers and chisels, saws. Of course, they were hand saws, back then days there wasn't no electric. Well, he was tickled to death. And then a great big keg of nails got lifted down off of that buckboard. He was like, pickles? No, they're nails. They come in a big keg like a pickle bar. Oh, goody, so I didn't think I could eat that many pickles. He said, but we could sure use the nails. Well, they got started marking out the 4 corners. And it was like, since this is your project, we're just helping on our off time. We all decided to donate some time. Can you spell your name? He goes, yeah, I learned to at least do that and a few numbers. They said, well, we'll go find a great big rock. You carve your initials in there, and we'll put a date. And that goes as one of the cornerstones for this little learning center / church gathering place. So he got to work, and they started slapping lumber together, and they first got the floor done. He was looking it over and he said, this is going to be pretty good. So all of a sudden these guys come back with this big old giant rock, and he said right there it'd be okay, just set it right there in that corner there. And tomorrow I'll chisel my name in there and the year. So he's thinking. He goes in, washes up real good, and he eats supper. And, well, he's tired, he goes to sleep. Next day he goes to work, but he's looking at that, which was the floor, thinking, I can work with this. It won't go up near as long as I thought. It'd be a lot quicker. So he goes to work, and all the way to work he's thinking. But when he gets to work, he forget about home and the building. He's just working up a storm. So he gets off that evening, and he goes down by the river, and there's them kids, and he's, gather around, children, gather around. Gonna tell a story now. He starts talking about little baby Jesus and the dreams and hopes, how the angels all come down to see the new baby into the world. When he gets done, he said, now, children, I'll be back again tomorrow, around the same time, same spot. Till we get our building over there in the other valley done, then y'all come over there. We'll have meetings where you just walk down the tracks. It ain't very far down the tracks. And he said, I'll put a wooden sign there so you'll know to make the turn to come to the gathering place. It's all our place. It ain't just my place. It's going to be it's a place for everybody. Place of learning. So as time goes by, one wall goes up. More time goes by, the next wall, third wall, then the front wall. They cut a opening for a door. Then the roof goes up. He goes, well, before we get too far along, I need to look at the building up the road, that church and school up there. So on one day he's passing by, he said, what's that big tower thing there on the front of that learning building there? So that's the bell tower. Oh yeah, he said they had one of those where I was at working, as a slave. Y'all don't have any bells? He goes, yeah, I imagine we could muster up one. We throw that into, along with some rope. So they got busy the next couple of weeks, making a small little bell tower. Well, come the day they delivered the bell, and they hooked a rope on it, and run it up, got that bell up there and got her fastened, and hooked the rope to her, tossed the rope down the hole down there, and they tied it off. They was like, well, ring the bell. You come up with this idea. He got in there and he pulled that bell, and he pulled that bell. It made some of the prettiest sounds where you could hear it plumb over in the town. Well, all these people come running, thinking maybe there was a fire or something. He reached down there in his jacket and pulled out that little Bible. And, gather round, children, gather round. It's story time and education time. Well, everybody in town come running. They thought there was a damn fire. People were sitting out there in the big oak trees and cottonwood trees. He said, as soon as they get some chairs in there, some pews, we go inside. On the rainy days, we go inside. On cold days, we go in there. We got a wood stove. But he said, it's nice out, and we don't have to sit on the floor. And he said, well, we just had to sit on these rocks here. And he started telling his stories, and they listened, and some of the little kids, they even fell asleep. Well, his voice was just like a violin at night. Put some of those kids right to sleep. Even some of the grown-ups over there leaned against the trees started snoring. He just kind of chuckled now and then and keep talking. When he was done, he was like, and I'll see all of you tomorrow now. Now remember, we get this done, all of us, we'll have us a learning building and a gathering building, church building. We use it for everything, school, everything. So, come today, they got the pews in there, and they was all handmade too. May not have been the comfortablest things, but they would sure set your butt and ease your back while he was up there talking, and people started coming because he was ringing that bell. I said, you could hear it from miles away. Well, that sound traveled down that valley, along the tracks, down there along the river, and people showed up. And they said, well, oh, it's story time? He goes, no, it's dedication time. This gathering place ain't just mine, it's for our people. All people. Not just the black people, but all people that want to learn or that want to be entertained. So, got a ribbon here stretched in the doorway, and he said, a pair of scissors here that the boss gave me, and I want to dedicate this learning center and this church school to all the members of our little community. And with that, he took the scissors and he cut the tape. Opened the door and smelled of fresh wood. Why, there was a smell of oak, pine, cedar. Seemed like every time you turned around, there was a different smell floating around in that room off that lumber. And it all smelled like home. Well, they come in and they was all shocked and amazed because all these people had chucked in a little time for this, a little time for that, a saw here and a hammer here, and sometimes a little bit of blood from smashing your finger with a hammer, a little bit of sweat. But it was their own place, their very own, and they had all chipped in on building it. One man's dream brought a community together. So he walking around looking too and looking things over and watching the people's reaction, and he was like, will you tell us a story? That sounds fitting. So he walks up to the pulpit and he gets his Bible out, lays it there on the pulpit there, and a nice gentle breeze coming through those windows. They didn't have a whole lot of money, so they couldn't afford stained colored glass like you see in some of these churches and cathedrals nowadays, but it was their very own place of worship. They didn't have to go sit outside and at these other places and peek through the windows and hoping to hear the sermons, and they had their very own place. But everybody was welcome. White, black, didn't make a difference. Everybody was welcome at this place. Well, time went by. They got a little rug to be thrown down there on the floor. And eventually they got them a slate, and they keep track of how many people showed up, what day, and whatnot. Well, time went by, and congregation grew. Well, Monday through Friday, They even had a school teacher there that taught. Blacks and whites were both was allowed to go there. Well, the kids started learning, along with even some of the parents. When they wasn't too busy, they could go there and learn their numbers and their letters, learn how to calculate things. That way, when they go to the store, they could learn how to count change and learn what the new free world was. Instead of seeing it from being a slave, they was going to learn it for being freed people. They wanted to exercise their rights, and that was okie dokie down there. Well, time went by. There was World War I come through. People signed up, drafted into that. 10 years later, World War II. Then come Korea. The 1950s. 60s. Well, the boss, he had gotten old and sick and passed away one day. And it seemed like that he was the glue that kept that community bonded together. But after he passed away, people started moving away, and this store down there closed. That bar fell off into the river because there wasn't people maintaining it. Well, this business left. Now the train, it ain't picking people up. The old iron horse was now just for goods to be hauled to big cities, where it used to, the train stop, people get off, people get on, livestock was taken on. No, none of that no more. Railroad got greedy. So they wasn't making up on the passengers and loading up in these little small, tiny depots. So wasn't long and the depot closed down because there wasn't no need for it. Wasn't no people getting off and no people getting on. Train wasn't even stopping there no more. Well, you know, years had passed, but some people is like some old dogs. Some old dogs, you can't teach them new tricks. They're set in their ways, and that's the way they're going to be until they croak. Well, there's people like that too. And even though the dates and years had changed, some of those throwed back from the old days hadn't forgot they was still pissed off. Well, some of the small surrounding towns, these people just wasn't wanted in, because there was still some of them old dogs that you wasn't going to teach no new tricks to them. They wasn't even no good to themselves. But that's not for me or you to decide. It's just the way it is. So it made it harder on these people. They had to drive or walk or take a horse and buggy. Yes, I said horse and buggy. Until they got automobiles. 15, 20 miles to go to town instead of just 7 or 8 miles. Well, you know, you just say you do that once a month. That's one hell of an ordeal. Take you half a day to get there. With a little bit of shopping and stuff you got to do. Time you get home, shit, it's 10, 11 o'clock. So you waste almost 3 days. One day preparing for the trip, one day for the trip there and back, the next day a day of rest because you're worn out watching for all the chug holes, snakes, whatnot. Just wear you out. Well, this church kept flourishing. This little school set back in a little knobby hole that from the main road you couldn't see. Well, the property around it changed hands and things were changing too fast. But some of them old dogs hadn't forgot. Mean old bastards. So, the old man was getting old. He was a young man when he started this venture, and he kept the venture going and kept a growing her. But time has a way of changing everything. People got tired of going a long ways because you ain't welcome to come to this town and buy nothing. If you ain't buying nothing, you're just laundering. We can arrest people for that. So they would go to towns that was friendly to them, which was further. Finally, some of them was like, fuck this, we've had enough. At least we can go to this town, and it's a lot further away, but shit, we might as well move there. It'd take 3 fucking days. So some of them did. A majority of them stayed. Well, in the early 60s, like 61, 62, 63, somewhere around there, come a day when one night these colored folk went to sleep. Next day the sun come up. Kind of a cloudy day, but the sun did come up. 98% of these black people, poof, just vanished. Only the hills and the trees and the river knows what happened. Well, years later, a young girl was looking for this town that dried up and blowed away. The only thing that seemed to know about that town and the people in it, along with the colored folk, was the big cottonwoods, the birds, and the river. They all bore witness to all this, all these changes. Well, this young lady, she had heard about this town from her great-great-grandmother, had passed on a few years, and never got a chance to take her great-great-granddaughter show her. But she told her stories about this place because she grew up there as a little girl. Well, the girl had heard tales, you know. She wanted to see this place, if there's any traces of it. But she was driving down the road. Nice day out. And this girl was full of wonder and amazement and questions. She was another one of those people of learning. And she's going down through the windy old hills and hollers. She noticed this man out there in the front yard with a bucket. And he's tossed out a little grain. Them chickens come up there and cluck and peck and eat. And he tossed out a little more, and them chickens be clucking and eating. Well, she slowly approached the mailbox there, and the guy got up off the bucket he was sitting on and set the bucket that he had to feed in down, and after he tossed out a few more handfuls for the chickens, he walked down the mailbox, and he goes, "Can I help you, missy?" She goes, "I'm looking for this little town." Now, I won't use the name because I don't need to. The town existed at one time. There's still remnants of it. Very little. He looked at her and he goes, Miss, I'm not trying to be mean. Nothing ever comes good of this place. She goes, well, my great-great-grandma lived down there, and she used to tell me stories, and we was always going to get there, but she passed away before we could get there. And I want to see this place where she lived. He goes, well, a lot of it's gone, but he said, a young lady like you shouldn't ought to go to places like this because it's just simply dangerous. Why people go missing there. And he goes, it's just not a place a young lady should be. And she goes, well, I do a little research. And he goes, I thought so. She goes, can you tell me about the old black school down there and the old black church? And he goes, ma'am, I'm telling you, why don't you just pull here in my driveway, turn around, and go back to where you come from, because it's mighty dangerous down there. Why, he said, those black folk you're talking about, just overnight, they didn't truck out of here, they didn't buckboard out of here, they didn't take a train out of there. They were just gone. Just overnight, vanish. Nobody knows where they went. Only the hills and the river and the trees know. They bore witness to whatever happened. Now I'm telling you, miss, just take what memories that you was told and stay away from that place. Bad medicine down there. She goes, well, can you give me anything? He goes, ma'am, slaves come from a little bit of everywhere. But there were some slaves there that come from faraway lands. They wasn't like the rest of the slaves, some of them. Even the regular slaves was a little leery of them. But everybody got along down there. But just so you know, there was some bad medicine brought in there, and it was kept a lid on for years, until one day, just a few years ago, there was a lady come down to one of these small river towns just down the river there. Well, she got off one of them old flatboats, and she walked up to this town. Like she knew where she was going. Her skin was really dark, real dark. Well, a pretty lady. Well, she walked up toward this little town. Well, they just told her in no simple terms, you ain't doing business here. She said, you know, we've been free for years. We're all equal. And they said, ma'am, get. Times may have forgot, but these people hadn't. So she walked back toward the river, and she's looking up the tracks. Well, she stopped and said a few words to herself under her breath. She put her purse over her shoulder, and up the tracks she went. She didn't make it very far past the old cemetery right there on the edge of that old town just south of where she was trying to get to. She never did make the journey. She never got that far. She had been surprised, violently attacked. Several months later, some young kid down there fishing along the drainage ditch that goes into the river. They found her body there along the old road in a little canal deal. Well, the sheriff was informed. By then they had telephones and stuff. And sheriff eventually showed up after about an hour because he had to come away from this town that's like 15 miles away. Him and the mayor there, they was looking it over. And now this was in the newspaper too. The local newspaper. Exact words. Why, she had a nice set of pantyhose on. Well, they was fancy pantyhose too. Something like you get from France or someplace. Probably out of one of them catalogs like Sears, J.C. Penney's. Who knows? Sears and Roebuck. Well, she had on a nice shiny pair of heels. Well, her hair was even neatly done. It was nice and wavy and long. Probably about halfway down her back. She had a nice gown on, shirt, had the ruffles around the neck and button down. Had the flared sleeve like you see the old pirate, movies where the sleeves are kind of flared and ruffled. Nice jewelry on her hands. That necklace. The necklace was described, and lo and behold, would you believe this shit? It was a gold chain, and it hung down on her chest, outside of her shirt. Well, there was a round circle and an upside-down star. Now, I'll be damned if that don't sound like a goddamn pentagram. Well, they didn't know. They saw some kind of weird pendulum. Well, the mayor was like, well, shouldn't we get a coroner down here and load the body? Exact words. I am repeating their exact words that come out in the newspaper. Why the hell should we waste gas like that? He took his boot, pushed the body off into the ditch, kicked some rock over, and he goes, fucking worms gotta eat. Mayor just kind of tipped his hat a little bit. Well, they left her there. And that was probably the biggest fucking mistake those assholes ever made. They had no clue by what they just did and what had happened years before with all them people upriver at that town that just poof disappeared. They had no clue the ball that had got set into motion. Because remember I told you that lady, after she got told to leave, and before she started up them tracks too far, she stopped and was mumbling something. That mumble was a curse. And that fucking curse is still as live today as when she said it. Well, come to find out, this old man's telling this young girl this story about this. That young girl, that black girl, that was found alongside the road there by the canal, was killed, more than likely, can never be proved. You know how things were back in the 60s. Probably killed by somebody or some people in that and around that town. But before they did, she put a curse all along that stretch of the river. From that town, that little river town, up to the next little river town. And anything in between. And let me tell you something. I can say for a fact I've been witness to some of the shit that happens up in that area. And let me tell you, I've been there at nighttime in that area. I've been there in the daytime. You don't see no squirrels, no rabbits, no deer, no nothing. Not even a frickin' frog. This curse run deep, and it's still just as alive today as it was the first day she uttered them words because of the way she was treated and the way her ancestors was treated. Because she was a descendant of one of those ex-slaves up there, probably of a Haitian descent, and some of those were steeped into hoodoo, voodoo. If you crossed the line, they would probably wing one of those spells. She put a curse on that place, all along there. And there's shit that still happens today along those areas that cannot be explained. Now, me and my wife see some weird shit there. And I attribute that probably to the curse that this young lady put on there because of the way she was unfairly treated. I can't say that I blame her, because I'd have probably done the same thing and probably even worse. So, this curse is the wingdinger. They've never figured out how to stop all these weird things. Creatures, ghosts, phantoms, phantom trains. You name it. This area has all this. Creatures that you can't see, but you can hear them. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, be good to one another, because you never know. Somebody that's really, really nice can be really, really nice. But if they like my wife, you aggravate them, tease them, screw with them, hurt one of them, or worse. They could put a spell on you that you could never get rid of. You would beg for a death that wouldn't come. So a word to the wise is, just be good to one another. And just remember one thing. If you don't learn from history, it could damn well repeat itself. So, be good to one another. And for God's sake, be good to your fellow men and women no matter what goddamn color they are. We all bleed the same color, red. We all have the same wants, needs, dreams, wishes. We all just want to be free. Live amongst each other and get along with each other. If you can't, then I don't know what to tell you. You're going to repeat the same damn lessons that's already been learned. No man or woman can be owned. It shouldn't be owned. So just try to get along. You know, this is no shit, swear to God. Two people, one person walks into the store and the other person's in there. The person that's already in there is having a bad day. And do you know, they could be thinking some hellish thoughts. And you know, you walk in that store and you see them sitting there and you know they're perturbed, disgusted, fed up with bullshit. And you walk in and you smile. Hello. That could be the difference between what they do after you leave that store versus if you walk in and flip them the bird and tell them to get the fuck out of the way. That one little gesture could change their day for the better. These are things you ought to think about. It don't cost nothing for a friendly gesture, a smile, a how's your day? And if their day is bad, it don't cost nothing to just simply say, well, you know, it's still early in the day could get better. Leave them on a high note, don't knock them down. So you think about this, and if anything I've said resonates with you or you like the story, give me a thumbs up. It'll cost you a fucking dime. I won't charge you 1 penny. I'll appreciate it though. It'll help the channel. Let me know I'm doing something right. Leave me a message. I'll read all messages and I'll answer them. Y'all take care, and I'll catch you on the next one. This is Henry saying good night.